Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2020 and to your qualifying report for the 2020 Italian Grand Prix Round 8 of the season, a session I've been looking forward to so much over the last week or so. We always know Monza stirs up a fantastic Grand Prix filled with drama, filled with emotion from the passionate Ferrari fans, but we also know qualifying is always just a little bit special. We know the slipstream is huge here. We know things get a little bit argy-bargy in every single session. It wasn't to the extreme lengths of last year in Q3, but certainly in the earlier sessions, plenty of argy-bargy kerfuffling going on and plenty of mistakes from drivers going wide, a couple of them dipping their back tyres into the gravel, and overall it was a really enjoyable session. So spoiler warning, as always, if you've not seen today's qualifying this weekend, I would very much recommend going away quickly, watching the highlights, and then coming back afterwards. Spoiler warning out of the way, this is your result for the Italian Grand Prix Qualifying. And once again, it was Lewis Hamilton taking pole position in 2020, number 6 of the season. Teammate Valtteri Bottas was P2. Not a horrific day from the finish drive. We'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. Carlos Sainz P3 for McLaren with Perez P4. Verstappen, the lead Red Bull, on row 3 P5. Lando Norris with his pizza-inspired helmet P6 with the pizza man from last year, Daniel Ricciardo, alongside him in P7. It was Stroll P8, Alex Albon 9th, and Pierre Gasly rounding out the top 10. It was his teammate Danny Kvyat once again in 2020 P11. Ocon struggled, but I've got a good feeling about him in P12. Leclerc 13th for Ferrari, the lead Ferrari. Ex-Ferrari driver Kimi Raikkonen 14th. Magnussen, Grosjean, the two Haas cars next to each other again, 15th and 16th. Sebastian Vettel 17th for Ferrari. Giovinazzi, the home hero, the Italian driver, P18, and the two Williams, P19 and P20. Onto the quali debrief then, no messing. This weekend, lots to talk about. I think we'll start at the front and work our way backwards this time around. Despite the nerf, no party mode. Mercedes, surely they were going to be in trouble. No slipstream either for either of their drivers. Mercedes trying something a little bit different. Didn't really matter. Comfortably the best team on the grid yet again. Hamilton, pole position, number 6 this season. But in all fairness to Valtteri Bottas, Monza's usually a circuit he struggles at quite a bit. He had never been on the front row of the grid here in Monza, a statistic I was blown away by. He's been able to do that, second today, only 69 thousandths of a second behind Hamilton. So close between the two of them, but just that little bit extra class and performance from Hamilton putting him P1 today. In behind though, we theorised about this last weekend. We said that judging at the straight line speed that a lot of the midfield teams had at Belgium, surely showing up to Monza, Red Bull strengths would kind of be taken away and they potentially could slip back into that midfield. And that's exactly what happened. And it was Carlos Sainz from McLaren, third place for Mr. Chile. What a lap, what a drive from Carlos Sainz today. Consistently quicker than teammate Lando Norris, who himself once again get through to Q3 this season. Only the two Mercedes, Verstappen and Norris, are the only drivers to get through to Q3 at every single event this season. And Norris's actual statistic is 15 races in a row now. He's made it through to Q3. He's great at qualifying, but Sainz just got the better of his teammate today. The gap 1.25 hundredths of a second. But the Spaniard, for the second time this season, lining third on the grid. Will he be able to hold off Perez? Will he be able to fend off Verstappen? But with Norris only 3 places behind, I think McLaren have a really good chance of a podium tomorrow. Race pace looks strong as well. Yesterday in practice 2, they looked really good. And this morning in practice 3. So McLaren, I've got a really good feeling about them tomorrow. In behind Sainz, Sergio Perez. The gap between this midfield is ridiculous. And I said it so many times this year, I'll continue to say it. I'm sorry. If there was no Mercedes, Formula 1 would just be so ridiculously competitive, it would be brilliant. And with a McLaren third, Racing Point fourth, we don't even have a Red Bull on the second row of the grid. Sergio, who of course missed those 2 races at Silverstone, is trying to recover as best he can in the drivers' standings. Fell behind Daniel Ricciardo after last weekend, but a real statement of intent here. Had the slipstream. Sainz actually, and I just want to quickly mention that, didn't have the slipstream from Lando in Q3, so did a mega lap to end up where he did. But Perez consistently was fighting in those top positions. Stroll, we spoke about this in the build-up to the weekend. He usually has an impeccable record here at Monza. Started on the front row a couple of years ago back when he was driving for Williams. And in every single season of Formula 1 he's driven in, has always made it to Q3. That statistic still stands, but wasn't able to beat Sergio this time around. Again, the gap's not a million miles away. It was about 0.2 or 2.5, 0.3 between Perez and Stroll, which is a little bit more than we've been used to this season. Lance just not quite being able to hook up the car in all 3 sessions today, but Racing Point right there with McLaren have a really good shot at a podium tomorrow. Behind the McLarens, or one McLaren and Racing Point, we then kind of had Red Bull as that 5th fastest car, which is really quite strange to say, but whereas earlier on in the weekend it appeared that Honda seemed to have kind of magicked up this new magic formula, what they could run in the straight line at Belgium and again here at Monza, just didn't quite pay off when it got to qualifying. The AlphaTauri struggled, Max Verstappen never really got a mega lap together and ultimately will start P5, big surprise there. But I think the bigger story here is Alex Albon, 9th overall, only a couple of tenths, or 0.3 he is, isn't he, off his teammate, which again is consistent to where he's been pretty much all season long. 9th isn't great, only just in front of the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly, but Alex Albon is such a lucky man to not only have made it into Q2, but also to made it into Q3, was just ahead of Romain Grosjean in Q3. Grosjean making a silly mistake on his final run. It wasn't nice to see, but Grosjean having to abort that final lap would have beat Albon. Albon very lucky to get through to Q2. Q3, a similar story, but it was Ricciardo who messed up on his lap, which ultimately hurt Esteban Ocon. Ocon didn't have the toe, couldn't get a quicker line. Albon just scraped through. So Red Bull, it's not a circuit they usually do brilliantly at. They usually are the 3rd quickest team behind Mercedes and Ferrari, but I think this is more proof that that midfield is so close, and the likes of Racing Point, Renault and especially McLaren have taken another step forward this season. We spoke about Norris P6, we spoke about Stroll and Albon. Daniel Ricciardo also mixing in that group of drivers, 7th for the Aussie driver. Very close once again to all of those drivers around him, close to Max Verstappen, very close to Norris, a 10th or so off Sainz and Perez, but I expected a little bit more from Renault. If I'm being completely honest, we spoke about it a lot in our build-up, in our preview on Friday. We also spoke about it last weekend after Belgium. We said surely if Renault were good in Sector 1, good in Sector 3 at Spa, they'd be fantastic all over the place at Monza. And don't get me wrong, they weren't horrific. 7th is a solid result. Only a couple behind Verstappen is a brilliant result. I think the big thing that hurt Renault was not having those 2 cars through to Q3. And it was that mistake from Ricciardo in Q2 that ultimately cost Ocon more than anything. Ricciardo getting it wide on the exit of turn 5 into the gravel, aborted his lap, which at the time Ricciardo was safe anyway. Ocon wasn't. I just assumed, well, Ricciardo will keep going, Ocon will get a nice little slipstream, and then if Ocon gets too close, Ricciardo will move out the way. Renault instead went for the strategy just to completely get Daniel out of the way straight away, which I was a little bit surprised at, but I guess, and I'm hoping, the engineers would have a better idea than I do, and in the moment they decided very quickly, get out the way, Daniel, you're not going to be quick enough, you're going to ruin Ocon's lap. But even though he did get out of the way, it did hurt Ocon a little bit, probably reacting with the puff of smoke and the gravel Ricciardo would have kicked up. Ocon would have been the first driver through that mess, and then just having Ricciardo on the inside at the braking zone wasn't the nicest place for Ocon to overtake Danny Ric. Ocon out, which was a huge surprise in Q2. Albon, again, like I say, very lucky to scrape through as a result. But I've got a good feeling about Renault tomorrow. Not going to quite have a lot of the strategy options in terms of having a rear gunner with Daniel Ricciardo. However, Ocon will have a different tyre choice starting in P12. So I don't think it's doom and gloom just yet. The car looked good in practice. They've got a lot of optimism to have in this Grand Prix. 10th for Pierre Gasly, 11th for Danny Kvyat. Not a bad job for the AlphaTauris today. It's pretty much where we expect them to be. He's at that lower end, just scraping through to Q3, or just missing out. And for what seems to be the millionth time in a row this season, Danny Kvyat just misses out on Q3 and will start P11. I feel I always have him on that graphic at the beginning going through the results. He always seems to be standing there. I never really seem to need to change that one. But he will come good in the race tomorrow, especially on that alternate strategy. It's something that Danny's been really good at, well, making work over the course of this season. And maybe Pierre will come under threat of that early doors. In front of Ocon, in front of both Ferraris, it's not really a bad job. And as we theorised earlier on in the weekend, AlphaTauri, the lead Ferrari team here at Monza. You really can't make it up. And the team's technically first ever home weekend to beat Ferrari. Hey, they will take that every day of the week. We might as well talk about Ferrari. Leclerc is up next in our order. 13th place, as to be expected. They were 13th and 14th in Spa. We thought it would be worse at Monza. It is worse at Monza. Leclerc stays 13th. Vettel, 17th. 17th. The man that was fighting for pole position last year will start 17th for his final Ferrari Monza trip. It's madness. We knew it would be bad. We knew it wouldn't be great. But surely, if you looked at their pace all session long, really, in Sector 1, they're only about a tenth, 2 tenths off Mercedes. But as soon as it gets to real straight line speed territory, absolutely nowhere. And the fact that you look at that graphic on the side of the screen, you look at those three teams we spoke about all season long at being your back markers, your Williams, your Haas, your Alfa Romeos, Ferrari are there with them. And it's just bizarre. It really is. Mugello next weekend, the 1000th Grand Prix in the team's history. I'm more optimistic about that. I think that will be a circuit that suits their car a little bit more. And with a real lack of straights at Mugello, I think Ferrari will be better off. But considering they won here last season, what a turnaround. Sorry, Ferrari fans, you're probably sick to death of people moaning about your team. But Vettel, of course, getting caught out in that Q1 kerfuffle. And we're at this backpack now. We usually, if you are new around here, we talk about these back three teams as a group, Haas, Alfa and Williams, because they have been so close. We don't get to see the action very often because they are at the back, but keeping an eye on their times, on where they finish in qualifying the race, is really quite fascinating. And once again, it was Kimi Raikkonen who came out on top, slowly starting to get used to this 2020 car. Wasn't necessarily on top of it so much at the start of the season, but is slowly building back that momentum now. I mean, if you want to say Leclerc is at the front of that back group, you can do, but I think he'll be able to hold on to Kvyat and Ocon. So Raikkonen is our cut-off point this time round. K-Mag also got through to Q2 and actually made a mistake on his final run in Q2, coming out of the second Lesmo. We didn't get to see it, which I cannot believe we didn't get to see it. Show us on the TV if someone's making a mistake like that. Anyway, not a bad result from K-Mag. The second time this year, he scraped through to Q2. For the first time this year, Haas could have had both cars through to Q2, but Grosjean did make that mistake through the Parabolica on his final run. Alex Albon, a very lucky boy, but out-qualifying Sebastian Vettel. If you'd have asked Haas, would they take that last year? I am sure they would have. Giovinazzi's home Grand Prix 18th. Nothing magical from Gio here this weekend. That bit of form he was having at the beginning of the season, where I was convinced he would be able to stay next year and be that team leader, seems to be losing that a little bit now, and all that momentum he built up is slowly drifting away. He needs to beat Raikkonen here this weekend. We've got Formula 3, where a lot of the Ferrari and Prema juniors are fighting for the title. Formula 2, that's just about to kick off. Callum Ilott, Ferrari Junior, is on pole position. We've got Mick Schumacher in the mix. Robert Schwartzman, championship leader. All Ferrari Juniors. Giovinazzi needs to have a good result. I really do believe that. And starting 18th, it's going to be difficult for him, especially bouncing back for that slightly rookie-ish error that occurred in Belgium. And Williams, your final team. You may have noticed, normally we start from the back, don't we, and work our way forwards, but I wanted to end on Williams. We know this is a very emotional weekend for the team. We know it's going to be the final weekend with Claire and Frank Williams at the helm of the team. And it's a little bit of a slap in the face that they're 19th and 20th, which is only the first time this season that has happened. Latifi's been at the back, but Russell has not been on the back row of the grid for any race in 2020. Russell also not happy with the mess of cars getting in each other's way in Q1 and said, guys, you've got to be capitalising from this. And I do agree. When you look at the fact Grosjean almost got through to Q2, Raikkonen and Magnussen did, if they did put Russell not out in traffic, I think they could have had a great chance at sneaking through. I think George will be happy that his 100% record of beating his teammate in quali still stands after that mess in Q1. But it did hurt Vettel, did hurt Giovinazzi, Russell, Latifi, Raikkonen, Ocon. My goodness me, got so close. That really made you wince. 19th and 20th. It's not a circuit they expected to do great things at, but a sad weekend all round for Williams. And before we go, driver of the day, ones to watch, and then we'll have a little look forward at your Grand Prix for tomorrow. Driver of the day, there are a couple of shouts, but I'm giving it to Carlos Sainz. Only 1.25 in front of Lando Norris, but without the tow from his teammates to finish third overall, you can't really ignore that. A 1:19.695 P3, the second time this season. Surely the man who is moving to Ferrari next year will want to impress at what is going to technically become one of the most important events next season for him. Certainly showing the Tifosi that if they're going to be so worried about watching Ferrari this weekend, at least they can watch Carlos Sainz. My ones to watch for the Grand Prix, Sergio Perez from 4th. I think he's going to be hungry to claim that first podium of the season. Alex Albon from 9th. Critics are still circling. I think he needs a strong result, and points-wise, he's only a couple of points in front of Norris, only a couple of points in front of Leclerc, and only a couple of points in front of Lance Stroll. That fight is so close. Albon needs to keep moving forward, which I think he can do in the Grand Prix tomorrow. I spoke about Ocon earlier. Good car, good strategy. I think Ocon maybe, if things go his way and there's a safety car, could be an outside shot at a podium, but that is really tinfoil hat time. And my F1E ones to watch here at Monza, it was never going to be anyone else. Sebastian Vettel, his final race for Ferrari here at Monza, 17th place. Redemption surely on the cards from last year's catastrophic Spinella. We're going to have to wait and see. And that is your lot for your qualifying report for the 2020 Italian Grand Prix. The Formula 2 feature race is just about to kick off here, but probably by the time this is uploaded, it will have just finished. So the sprint race tomorrow morning, 10:10. And the grandioso event, the Italian Grand Prix, 2:10 tomorrow afternoon. You don't want to miss it, and I will be live with the F1 word straight after the Grand Prix at about 5 o'clock, and then I will give you my race review and full thoughts on the channel tomorrow evening. I hope you all enjoyed. If you are new, feel free to subscribe. Thank you all very much for watching, and hope to see you all in the next one.